Welcome to the 2024 Assistance to Firefighters Grant Program Application Development Training Series. In this session, we will be discussing the wellness and fitness, modification to facilities, and training activities that fall under the operations and safety application. The first thing we want you to know is that help is available to you through this process. One resource is our Regional Fire Program Specialist. There is at least one in each of the 10 FEMA regions. The URL here will take you to the website to view their contact information. The next option is the AFG Help Desk. It is staffed during business hours by fire service professionals that know the program and the fire service. The last bullet contains a link to our website where you can download self-help materials to assist you with developing your application and your narrative. We will discuss these later in the presentation. The AFG program sends out a monthly newsletter and program updates as necessary. Please visit the URL listed to ensure that you are signed up to receive these critical emails. All awards have been made for the 2023 AFG programs. You should have received your turn down letter if you were not awarded. If you would like more information on why you were not successful, there is a link in your turn down letter to request that additional assistance, or you can simply contact your regional fire program specialist. Depending on when you are viewing this webinar, the 2024 AFG application period is open or will be opening soon. The application period will open at 9 a.m. on the first day and end at 5 p.m. on the final day. Please note, all times are Eastern Time. This session is primarily comprised of an overview of the wellness and fitness, modification to facilities and training activities. We will also cover what is new for 2024 and our top 10 best practices. The Fire Grants program has three parts: the Assistance to Firefighters Grant, or AFG, which is what we're discussing today; the Staffing for Adequate Fire and Emergency Response, better known as SAFER, which provides funding to fire departments to increase staffing to meet national standards, either through hiring full-time staff or the recruitment and retention of volunteers; and the Fire Prevention and Safety Grant, or FP&S, which provides funding to bolster fire prevention activities within a municipality. It also has a research and development component to fund studies that could impact the fire service and firefighter safety. Below each program is the funding that Congress has appropriated for fiscal year 2024. Initially, both AFG and SAFER are equally funded at $324 million. However, 10% of the funds allocated to AFG are used to fund the Fire Prevention and Safety Grant. Let's discuss what is new for 2024. Language was added to clarify ineligible items under the wellness and fitness activity. We discuss these later in this presentation. For state fire training academies, language was added to clarify eligible costs with respect to the repair of training props. Under the equipment activity, the other EMS equipment line item was replaced with several specific items that were then prioritized high, medium, or low. Please watch our equipment and PPE training session to learn more. To apply for the Assistance to Firefighters Grant Program, you must be registered and active in the system for award management. Your SAM.gov account becomes inactive after a year if no action has been taken to update the account. So make sure this is done prior to applying to ensure your account does not become inactive through the award process. Entity validation for new registrants can take anywhere from 5 days to several weeks, depending on the documentation needed for the validation. If you do not have a SAM.gov account, it is imperative that you get started on this immediately. This system is free and requires no cost to register. In addition, help getting registered is also free. Here on the slide is the web address for the Federal Support Desk and their phone number, depending on your preference for contact. You are absolutely allowed to hire a grant writer. The Assistance to Firefighters Grant Program will reimburse you for the cost of a grant writer up to $1,500 if you are awarded. Your cost share, whether 5, 10, or 15%, is also applicable to grant writer fees. Please note that if you do hire a grant writer, you will need to claim those costs in the request details section of your application. You must pay your grant writer within 90 days of the NOFO release and 30 days after the application period closes. Grant writer services must be competitively procured. We strongly recommend following your local procurement policy. You will be required to submit a copy of the grant writer's contract, a copy of the invoice or purchase order, a copy front and back of the canceled check used to pay the grant writer, or other acceptable proof of payment, and a copy of your local procurement policy. If you do not have a local procurement policy, please follow the federal requirements outlined in 2 CFR Part 200, Sections 318 through 320. Some important things to consider when hiring a grant writer are: grant writers should be assigned permissions as a grant writer in FEMA Go. Be wary of giving your grant writer permissions as an authorized organization representative in FEMA Go, as this gives the grant writer the ability to do things like submitting your application or accepting your award. The application period is short and a busy time for grant writers. Some use templates or somewhat duplicative narratives, which could have a significant impact on your panel review score if the panelists notice the similarities, and they typically do notice. If you hire a grant writer, they must be identified as such in the application, even if you are not requesting a reimbursement for the cost of their services. The AFG program consists of 3 separate applications. The first application type is Operations and Safety. This application consists of 5 activities. These activities are equipment, personal protective equipment, training, modifications to facilities, and wellness and fitness. In this session, we will be discussing the latter 3 activities: training, modifications to facilities, and wellness and fitness. The second application type is vehicle acquisition. Eligible applicants can request to replace unsafe fire apparatus and ambulances in their existing fleet. The third application type is a regional request where 2 or more departments can combine to request a mutual need. It is important to note that each of these applications moves through the scoring process separately, as do the 5 activities under Operations and Safety. Please note that the state fire training academies have their own separate and distinct applications. The first activity we will cover is wellness and fitness. Wellness and fitness consist of two priority levels. In order to access priority 2 items, you will have to ensure that you are currently offering or requesting funds to implement the 5 programs listed here: periodic health screenings, entry physical examinations, immunizations, behavioral health programs, and cancer screenings. This slide contains a screenshot regarding the wellness and fitness priorities that are found in the NOFO. Once you have certified that you are offering the priority 1 items, or you have asked for funds to implement the programs you do not currently offer, you can ask for items under priority 2. Priority 2 items include everything else that you might associate with the wellness and fitness program. The guidelines for this program are a little less restrictive, so whatever you might consider to be a reasonable and relevant wellness and fitness program, you can request funding for. You can also request up to $10,000 to do minor alterations to the room where you are placing the wellness and fitness equipment. Things like padded floors and mirrors that you might associate with a gym are all items that could be considered as part of these minor alterations. The Criteria Development Panel has added some additional clarity regarding items that are not eligible to be requested under the wellness and fitness activity. These include saunas, hyperbaric chambers, ice baths, and the purchase of medical equipment. On the next couple of slides, we'll discuss the modification to facilities activity. There are 3 high priority items under this activity: direct source capture, exhaust systems, sprinkler systems, or smoke and fire alarm systems that can be retrofitted into your station. Although the replacement of source capture diesel exhaust systems is allowable, the highest priority will be given to applicants requesting a first-time installation of a system. For your request to be highest priority, the station being impacted must have sleeping quarters and be occupied 24/7. You are allowed to request up to $100,000 per station. Any request done under this activity cannot include construction, and it will require an environmental historical review prior to the beginning of the project. This slide contains a screenshot of the modification to facilities priorities that can be found in the NOFO. Some things to avoid asking for under modifications to facilities are air cleaning systems that would be mounted in your engine bay or fixed generators. Any request done under this activity cannot include construction. Security systems and fire station alerting systems are not allowed or eligible to be requested through this program. Let's move on to the training activity. In order for your training to be high priority, it must be led by an instructor that is certified to provide that training. Your training must result in those attending the training receiving some sort of national or state certification. You must be able to articulate that the training is going to bring you into compliance with NFPA or other national standards. Training that benefits the highest percentage of personnel within the agency will score the highest. There are some trainings that may change in priority depending on your community classification, so make sure to consult the Notice of Funding Opportunity prior to determining your request. It is also important to avoid requesting brand or vendor specific training. This slide contains a screenshot of the training priorities from the NOFO. Notice in this screenshot from the NOFO that there are some trainings that are high, medium, or low priority. Consult the NOFO to ensure the training you are requesting is a high priority for your community classification as indicated by the red H. Here's a list of some of the common training projects we see requested most often. One item of note is with EMS training. The highest priority is EMS training that is going to elevate the personnel from being trained from one level of certification up to the next higher level. For example, training your EMT basics from that level to EMT advanced. When preparing to make your training request, here are some eligible costs that you might consider. One is the contractual costs associated with paying the training instructor. Additionally, with requests for equipment and supplies that you may need to conduct the training, it is important that the equipment requested be specifically requested to support the training. Training requests that are for equipment only will not be eligible. If you have to pay members to attend training or pay overtime to send members to training, those costs are also eligible. However, fringe benefit costs associated with the personnel are not eligible. Lastly, if it makes more sense for you to rent a facility or AV equipment for your training, those costs are eligible. Sometimes there are items that need to be added to your request that are not on the drop-down list of items within an activity. And the pack that is considered equipment, but you need to add it to your SCBA request. Another example may be chargers for your portable radios. There isn't a charger item in the drop-down menu for equipment, so you'll need to add that to your request through other means. This is why the additional funding line is included in each drop-down menu so that items not listed can be added to your primary request. It is important to note that items added under additional funding are not scored, given that they are just there to supplement the primary request. However, there have been cases where applicants have used the additional funding line to request primary items because they could not find that primary item in the drop-down menu. This resulted in those applicants getting a 0 at pre-score because the additional funding line is not scored. If you cannot locate your primary item in the drop-down, please call your regional fire program specialist or the help desk. Another item to consider is microgrants. Microgrants are an option under your operations and safety application. A microgrant is a request that is less than $75,000 federal share and can be for any one of the 5 activities listed. It's important to note that microgrants are an option if you apply for a micro grant for something that is less than $75,000 under any of these activities that becomes your operations and safety application. You cannot apply for a micro grant for a PPE washer and do a second application to request SCBAs. Micro grants are intended to help applicants that have not been successful. For each microgrant application, the system will look back over the past 5 years to determine if the applicant has been successful or not. If not, the applicant may receive up to 3 additional points toward their pre-score, depending on how many times they have applied and not received an award. Microgrants only compete against microgrants. Microgrants have their own set aside, allowing the program to use up to 25% of the appropriation to fund microgrant applications. The final application type is a regional request. A regional request is where one or more agencies combine their application efforts to request a common need. Regional projects can be in the areas of training, equipment, PPE, or wellness and fitness. Two or more departments may also request to replace or acquire a vehicle that will benefit all departments involved. Regional requests require that an eligible department be the host or the primary applicant in the application. Please note that the type of department, whether career, combination, or volunteer, determines what bucket of funds the award will be made from. This is referring to the 25% set aside for each department type. The host will have to ensure that all regional partners are listed in the application and that a memorandum of understanding is executed and attached to the application. This memorandum of understanding should include the signatures of all regional partners as well as determine how the funds will be distributed and how the match will be allocated. Regional applications require that these statistics of the application be aggregated from the total for all the departments involved. This means that the total population, call volume, and other statistics represent the totals for all departments. One option to make this easier would be to download the application checklist from our website and share with each of your regional partners. Once they return them completed, you can easily add up things like numbers of firefighters, stations, response area, population, etc. to be incorporated into the application. Keep in mind that regional purchases must be made from the same vendor. This slide contains a list of program resources that can be found on our website. One resource you'll want to consider for the purpose of planning and preparation is the application checklist. The application checklist provides you with all of the information that you'll need to compile in order to complete a large majority of the application. The next valuable resource is the self-evaluation sheets. There are two of these, one for a regular operations and safety request and a second for a vehicle acquisition request. The self-evaluation sheets provide you with the exact criteria that the panelists will be reviewing your narrative based on. We recommend providing anyone that is going to review your narrative with a copy of the self-evaluation sheets so that they can review it based on the same criteria and provide you with feedback as to whether you have touched on all of the necessary items. Our latest resource is the Narrative Development Guide. This document builds off of the criteria outlined on the self-evaluation sheets and provides you with tips on how you can meet that criteria. There are even sample narratives included to help you get a feel for how your narratives should flow. In addition to printed documents, technical assistance is also available through the help desk and the regional fire program specialists. Here are the top 10 best practices for completing your AFG application. Number one, start preparing now and read the Notice of Funding Opportunity and Program Guidance in its entirety. Number two, use the application checklist and any other resources available to gather as much information as possible in advance of the application opening date. Number three, conduct your risk assessment and then align your request with the highest priorities of the program. Number four, make sure when developing your narrative to tell your department's story and the unique reasons for your request. Stay away from vendor narratives, templates, or copying any other program's narratives. Number five, read each question carefully and then answer it carefully. If you are not sure what a question is asking for, reach out to your regional fire program specialist. Number six, make sure that someone else is reviewing your entire application to include your narrative before you submit your application. Make sure that your authorized organization representative has submitted your application. Number seven, make sure to account for all eligible costs that you can associate with your request. These include training costs, service agreements, extended warranties, and possibly performance bonds in the case of vehicle acquisition. Number eight, ensure that your project can be completed within your grant's 2-year period of performance and articulate that in your narrative. Number nine, ensure that you have support from your community's decision-making authority and that they understand that there is a match requirement with this grant. Number 10, print your application using Command or Control P before you submit it. As this session draws to a close, please remember to reach out if you need anything throughout the application period. You can reach out to your regional fire program specialist, the AFG program help desk, or you can visit the AFG program website listed here on the screen that has information and resources available to assist. Thank you for taking the time to view this session and for your interest in the 2024 Assistance to Firefighters Grant.